So that was about the process of photosynthesis and the proof that photosynthesis did exist in a leaf. But still it did not convey any message that how did the plant actually can synthesize from this process. Because remember it's photosynthesis. Photo means usually it's referred for the sunlight, and synthesis when something is synthesized. So how is the food synthesized? Well, actually, with the help of photosynthesis, only starch is produced, and as we mentioned, starch is a type of carbohydrate. So we can say that yes, carbohydrate was synthesized with the help of photosynthesis process, but carbohydrates is maybe we'll learn in some future standards is like made of carbon, it's made of hydrogen, it's made of oxygen. So it's kind of a glucose. So it actually is not the entire nutrients. So how does the plant get the remaining nutrients? It should get proteins, and proteins are basically called amino acids. We'll study this part later, but yeah, so they are basically we can say like proteins are made up of nitrogen. So even nitrogen is present in huge quantity in the air. So is the plant's pores that we call stomata responsible for intaking nitrogen? No. The stomata or each leaf can only take carbon dioxide from the air. So then how does the nitrogen is available to the plant? Well, nitrogen is found in the soil, and the roots of the plants are responsible to make the nitrogen available to the plant. So you might be knowing like some farmers, they use some certain fertilizers. Then there are certain bacterias which can take the nitrogen from air, and they can convert it into the way a plant can take proteins from the converted part of nitrogen. So usually these are called fertilizers. We add some manure, and with the help of some bacteria, the nitrogen from the soil is made available to the plants. And an important fact here is there may be some plants which do not have green color, but still it can have chlorophyll in it. So yes, chlorophyll usually has a green color, but uh, that doesn't mean that the plants who do not have green color do not have chlorophyll. It's quite possible that even the plants who are not having green color has the chlorophyll present in them. So moving ahead, we also have certain plants who do not have chlorophyll. So how do they prepare their food? Well, as we normal human beings or normal animals do, we have to rely on other plants uh, to get our nutritions. The same thing happens in a special plant called Cascuta. These are plants which clinch over their hosts, and they take the nutritions from this host, and hence we can call them parasites. So to give an example, how do they look? So here we have an image of this plant Cascuta, and as you can see that the entire yellow part which you can see in this image, so this entire yellow part is actually this plant Cascuta, and these plants are called parasites, so because they rely on the nutritions from the host plant, and sometimes it happens that they consume all the nutritions from this host plant, and the host plant itself dies because of this. So we have plants that have chlorophyll that can prepare their own food. We also have plants that do not have chlorophyll, and they have to rely on such host plants to get their food. We also have a third category of plants who actually are kind of bit scary, and we call this plants insectivorous plants. So what happens here is there is this particular plant called a pitcher plant. So what happens is the leaves are made in such a way that they form a jar shape, and the leaf acts like a lid. So as and when an insect lies within this jar, the leaf gets closed, and there are certain digestive juices within a part of these leaves, and ultimately this nutrients are obtained from the dead insect. So we can say these are insect eating plants or insectivorous plants. So this is the example of a pitcher plant. As you can see, this is a jar like structure, and there is this lead. So when an insect lies within this jar, the lid gets closed, and the insect is trapped, and with the help of the digestive juices, the plant is able to get the nutrients from this insect. So these are insectivorous plants. Now we also have another type of living organisms. We call them saprotrops. What do they do? So we have autotrophs, which can prepare their own food. We have heterotrophs, who rely on other living organism to prepare their food, and we have this third category, saprotrops. So they also rely on other organisms, but they are dead organisms. So if a living organism relies on a dead organism to get the nutrition, we call them saprotrops. And a common example would be a fungi or fungus that we can see on a bread piece. If we keep the bread piece in open, we often see this kind of greenish layer over the bread, and these are nothing but fungi. And, so you can say that the mode of nutrition in which the organisms take in nutrients from a dead and decaying matter is called saprotrophic nutrition. So again, this is an important fact. So that's pretty much it for the types of living organisms or types of plants getting nutrients. We also have an important definition for symbiosis. So what happens is at certain times certain living organisms stay together, as in our case of living organisms, we stay together. So there is this particular relationship in which there are organisms living together, maybe a bacteria and certain type of plants. So what happens is the plant provides this bacteria a shelter. They provide them food, and the bacteria may provide them necessary nutrients, or vice versa. Sometimes the bacteria provide the shelter to the organisms, and these organisms prepare the food for this bacteria. So a common example would be lichens. It's an important organism. So in this case, like lichens is again a chlorophyll containing partner, so they can prepare their food on their own, and it usually lives with a fungus. So there is this relation between this alga and a fungus, and the fungus just provides shelter to this alga along with the water and minerals, and in return alga will prepare a food for this fungus. And it can be vice versa, like sometimes the plants provide nutrients to the fungus, and in return fungus will provide them water and certain other nutrients required from the soil. So there is this another bacteria called rhizobium, like as we discussed, like plants also need nitrogen from the soil along with some other carbohydrates which are prepared by the photosynthesis process. So how does this nitrogen again just get to the plant? Well, usually we use fertilizers, we use certain manures to make the nitrogen available to the plants. But it is also made possible with the help of this bacteria called rhizobium. So what do? Is they take atmospheric nitrogen and can convert it into a usable form that the plants can use. So this is one such example of plants absorbing nitrogen from the soil. And, they usually stay in the plants. We call them pulses. So like grams, peas, mung, beans, and all the other legumes, the pulses. They usually have this bacteria called rhizobium, which makes these pulses very rich of protein. So let's have a quick recap. What is autotrophic? Autotrophic are such organisms which can prepare their own food. The most common example would be plants. There are these certain algae, which we can see a greenish layer in certain ponds, which also have chlorophyll, and hence they are able to prepare their own food. So that these type of organisms are called autotrophic. What is insectivorous term? Well, we have seen this insectivorous type of plants, the pitcher plant, uh, who has a jar-shaped leaf, and there is a leaf which acts like a lid. So if any insect rests on this leaf, uh, this pitcher plant can use its digestive juices to take the nutrients from this insect. What is photosynthesis? So photosynthesis is carbon dioxide plus water plus sunlight. Together it can use to create nutrients. Um, Usually it creates carbohydrates in the plants, and in this process it also releases oxygen, and hence we can say, like, as we know, like trees intake carbon dioxide and they exhale oxygen. So the oxygen is prepared during the process of photosynthesis. They combine when you combine carbon dioxide with water uh, along with carbohydrates, oxygen is released in the air. What is chlorophyll? It's a green pigment which is normally found in plants, which is responsible for storing the solar energy. Nutrient, we know, like uh, there are this necessary components in food which we call carbohydrates, vitamins, proteins, fats. So these are called the nutrients. What are saprotrophs? Saprotrophs are such living organisms who depend on a decaying or a dead organism to get the nutrients from, are called saprotrophs. A common example would be fungus, which are usually found during the monsoon season. Then we have heterotrophs. So we human beings or other animals who rely on other living organisms for the nutrients are called heterotrophs. Like we get our nutrition from plants directly or indirectly. So nutrition, as we discussed, saprotrophic, we know what we have discussed. What is a host? Host comes into picture usually during this particular plant called Cuscuta, which clinges over a host tree, and it fetches the nutrients from the host tree. What is a parasite? So parasite is actually a tree which clings on the host tree to fetch the nutrients from. We call them parasite. And we have last term called stomata. We know that we have certain small pores on the surface of leaf, which is responsible for fetching carbon dioxide from the air, and this is called stomata. So this is the highlight of the first chapter.